In basic rhythmic training number 50, we're going to add one element that we have not seen before, and that is the eighth note rest. We met the eighth note in our last video, and the eighth note just says, make a sound that is 1/2 the duration of a quarter note. Or in this case, when we're in 2/4 time, make a sound that is 1/2 of a beat. The eighth note rest, just like all the other rests, says be silent for that same duration. Be silent for half of the duration of a quarter note, or in this case, be silent for half of a beat. So we're going to count an eighth rest exactly the same way that we would count an eighth note. The only difference is we are not going to make a sound on an eighth note. So let me take the first line up here, and I'm going to be very meticulous about writing out my 1 and 2 and. So I have an example that's in 2/4 time. I start with a quarter note. That's 1 and. Then I have 2 eighth notes. 2 and. Then this first eighth note in measure 2 is 1. Then the rest is on and. Then the next eighth note is on beat 2, and then the second rest is on and. Then I have 2 eighth notes, 1 and. Then another eighth note on beat 2, and then a rest on the and of 2. Then a note, an eighth note on beat 1, and then a quarter rest, so I'm going to rest. I'm not going to make a sound for 2 and. So let me just perform that first line so you can hear what that sounds like. I'm doing this a little bit under tempo. There's my beat. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta. In my second line, it's a little bit trickier, but the same principle applies. My 1 has an eighth note, so I'm going to make a sound on 1. Then I have an eighth rest on the and of 1. Then I have an eighth rest on the on the first beat of 2, and then an eighth note on the and of 2. My next measure is going to repeat that pattern exactly. 1 has an eighth note, the and of 1 has an eighth rest, 2 has an eighth rest, and the and of 2 has an eighth note. So then, in my third measure of that second line, I have 1 and 2 and 4 eighth notes in a row. And then, in the last measure, 1 on the downbeat. Then my and has an eighth rest. My 2 and has a quarter rest. So I'm not going to make any sound on the last 2 eighth notes of that beat. So let me perform the second line in its entirety. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta. So now let me go back, and I'm going to do the entire line of number 50 from the beginning to the end, all 8 measures, just so you're very clear about what this sounds like. And then you can go on and do the other ones on your own. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and ta 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 ta.